So some of you guys have been asking me some questions for the USMLE prep, and one of the questions I received was, should step 1 and step 2 be studied together? Okay, should step 1 and step 2 be studied at the same time? So I will address this question as consolidated as I can. Before we get started, please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. Help grow this channel. Please share with one of your friends who's prepping for USMLE. Hit the like button. Hit the bell if you want notifications. And find me on Instagram at Mehlman_medical, MEHLMAN_medical, and the link is down below. Now, let's start the fucking question. So, should step 1 and step 2 be studied together? The answer is almost always no, for most of you guys. It's never cookie cutter, okay? I'd say at least 80% of you watching this clip are in medical school and you're studying for step 1 before step 2. I've interacted with plenty of people who take step 2 before step 1. I've tutored people who take step 2 before step 1, as well as other doctors. Okay, so there's variability as far as the sequence and as far as where you guys are in your prep and your medical training. However, most of you are in medical school taking step 1 before step 2, and in that case, no, you should not be studying for step 2 at the same time as step 1. Okay, if you plan on taking step 2 after step 1, do not study for step 2 while you're studying for step 1. It's a Venn diagram. Information you'd study for step 2, you're really going to find, you're going to find that a lot of step 2 prep is just step 1. Okay, like I'd say at least half to 65% of step 2 is just step 1. I'll have step 2 students getting material wrong on the NBME exams or the clinical mastery series, which are the subject specific NBME exams. And it's literally just step 1. Like, what is aortic regurg? Okay, like how does cardiac tamponade present? It's just step 1 concepts. When we talk about step 2, it's like, next best step in management. What's the next best step in diagnosis? So there is overlap, okay? But in short, if you're scoring under 250 to 260 on any NBME practice assessments you sat for step 1, you shouldn't even be thinking about touching step 2 material, okay? We don't want you to get sidetracked. Recognize that there is tons of step 1 material that needs to be covered. I talked about this in some of my other clips, but at a minimum, NBME forms 20 through 30 should be memorized by you before going into the step 1, okay? So much discussion. Many of you guys are going to have questions. I get it, okay? But NBME forms 20 through 30. Yes, 25 through 30 are the ones online, but 20 through 30, it's 2,200 questions. That's essentially a Q bank. You're going to screenshot your incorrects into a Word document, save them as a PDF. You're going to review a master PDF of your incorrects from forms 20 through 30. And you will also, depending on how far out you are from your exam, review your corrects as well from 20 through 30. That's baseline. This is a very cursory discussion right now. But my point is that most people studying for step 1 haven't even done that, nor will they. Okay, let alone getting through a Q bank like UWorld, which has now become superfluous, up around 3,800 questions at the time of this clip. So there's a lot of prep that could be done for step 1 where it's audacious and misguided to be studying for step 2 while you're studying for step 1, if your intent is to sit step 1 next. Now the reverse, if you're studying for step 2, taking step 2 first, before step 1, which is unusual, but I have students who've done that, okay? Maybe you've graduated medical school and you're more fresh on the clinical stuff right now. You feel like you're more poised to do well in step 2, okay? There's reasons. But you should essentially be just studying for step 2 material if your scores are pretty decent. If I have a student who's taking step 2 before step 1 and he or she has low scores, and by low, I mean passing, maybe just above passing or lower, I will often just remediate by covering the highest yield step 1 material. I'm not talking about like molecular or like embryological bullshit. That's not what I mean. I mean just like your basic endocrine, heme, cardio, concepts that are integral. I'll cherry pick concepts that are like high yield enough for step 2, but that are integral to step 1, building foundation to get your scores up higher for step 2. That answers the question as far as should you look at step 1 material if you're currently studying for step 2? It's only if your scores are really low. It means that your original foundation for step 1 wasn't in place. Okay? When you take the step 2, and then you ultimately are going to go to the step 1, it's step 2 is a lot harder than step 1. Okay, I know a lot of people will say step 2 is easier. It's not. It's way fucking harder. Okay, people tend to score higher on step 2. It's because they learn how to prepare. They learn their mistakes when they're studying for step 1, and then they actually will prepare better for step 2. That's why scores tend to be higher on step 2. But the exam, step 2 is actually way harder in that you need to know your step 1 concepts, then be able to integrate them in more complex vignettes. And the vignettes tend to be longer for step 2 questions overall. Okay, so if you take the step 2 and then you go on to study for step 1, it's an unusual sequence, but you're going to be coming out of a batting cage of about 110 miles per hour and going down to about 80. It's going to be a lot easier for you to take the step 1 after you've already sat the step 2. Okay? There's a lot we can talk about. Okay? It's going to be a long clip. But the baseline point is if you are currently studying for step 1, do not study for step 2 right now at the same time. Ignore the step 2 material. If you're scoring above 260, we can entertain the possibility of maybe thinking about some step 2 material if you've already exhausted all the NBME material for step 1, which is highly unlikely, okay? And the reverse, if you're studying for step 2 before step 1, then we would only have you look at step 1 material if you're pretty shitty with your scores, which is just above passing and below, okay? We could entertain the highest yield step 1 material, which my PDFs on my website for the subjects are really effective for drilling down a mix of step 1 and step 2 material, okay? Once again, this could be a long clip. We're going to keep it more consolidated. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel, and I appreciate your time. That's it.